Hi everyone, Professor Phil Travis here, and now we are inside the amphitheater or Coliseum here in Arles. And you just take a second to look around this structure. Of course, you see the metal seats. Clearly, those were not constructed by the Romans. Believe it or not, they still have events in this Coliseum. The Coliseum has been outfitted with some modern seats here, and they have events like bullfighting. Events like what you see being prepared for below us, if you can see that in the video. It's kind of amazing. It would be kind of an amazing place to watch an event, given the fact that we are standing in a structure that is upwards of nearly 2,000 years old. Again, the Arles Coliseum was built around 90 AD. Arles was a really important center for the portion of French Gaul here. Well, let's not call it French Gaul because the French didn't truly exist in that way, but a portion of Gaul here in southern France. It was a center of this area in the Mediterranean. They built canals that connected it to the Mediterranean, and in that respect, it was an important port. The Emperor Constantine visited here. Augustus Caesar, the first emperor of the Pax Romana, following the wars associated with the rise and fall of Julius Caesar, built or had a theater built here, which is not far from here. And of course, this Coliseum, and you can imagine, would have hosted chariot races. It would have also been the site of brutal hand-to-hand combat that we all have come to associate with the Roman Empire. So it's in a it's a relatively small place today, and a place that's really worth visiting, but a very important part of this portion in southern France of what we call Roman Gaul. It's also, as you travel and you think about going to see the sights of Rome, we often go to Rome, and of course we'll be doing some videos from Rome, and there's an incredible amount of things to see in Rome. But in certain respects, coming to a place like this is almost even better because it's smaller, there's less people, there's no line. We walked right up to the ticket booth to buy our tickets to get in here. They're like €5.50. So it's cheap to get in, it's easy access, there's no lines, there's no crowds of people around you, and yet you're exposed to, it's not as colossus as the Roman Coliseum, but it's still highly impressive and very intact, and even still being used today. Again, the Arles Coliseum here in Arles, constructed during the period of the Emperor Domitian. Now, of course, an interesting little tidbit as I want to just talk briefly about empire. In history, the Roman Empire is a great example of this, because empire is in one respect a very negative connotative term, if that's a word. It has a negative connotation. Because, of course, empires are large zones, network spheres, if you will, controlled by a central authority, and they're usually, well, not usually, they're brought about typically by war and effectively forcing other people under the rule of one singular authority. And so in that sense, empires are often associated with destruction and war, the repression of other cultures and other peoples. But history, it's oftentimes difficult to draw a black and white sort of understanding of things. It's often difficult to say it's entirely negative or it's entirely positive, and empire is a great example of that. Because the Roman Empire, while you can cite many negative elements of it, the brutality of it, many of the Roman emperors were just utterly brutal. The conquests of various people could be incredibly destructive. The Romans were responsible for the extinction of a number of large mammals. They waged terror campaigns, in some cases against their own people. But the Roman Empire created this large sort of centralized network sphere that during the so-called Pax Romana, which was begun after the rise of Augustus Caesar, who of course died in the early Common Era, 14 AD I believe is when he died. Augustus Caesar created the Pax Romana, and that was the Roman peace. And this was a period of stability and relative peace throughout the Mediterranean world that made the movement of peoples, of goods, of ideas and things, economics and so forth possible. And this, interestingly, helped to give rise to the expansion of Christianity. And of course, in the last 2 centuries of the Western Roman Empire, Christianity became the state religion, following the leadership of Constantine. And so in this respect, the Pax Romana, while it is part and parcel to a large and oftentimes repressive and destructive empire, the Pax Romana created Roman peace that ultimately, for some, created a great deal of prosperity, and in many respects, created the path of centuries beyond. And of course, Domitian, historians like the Roman historian Suetonius, noted Domitian as a tyrant. But historians today say, yes, he was a harsh ruler, but he also did a lot of things that ultimately set the stage for a more prosperous, or a continued prosperity in Rome during the next century.